Thanksgiving morning, I stood in my kitchen, hands dusted with flour, the scent of roasting turkey filling the air. For 30 years, I'd been the heart of every holiday, the one who made sure no one ever ate alone. But this year, as I set the table for one, my phone buzzed with a message that made my knees buckle. "Helen, it's best if you eat at home this year. We want a quiet Thanksgiving, just us. Please understand." It was from my daughter-in-law, Emily. My son, David, didn't even call. I stared at the empty table, my heart pounding in my chest. I never imagined I'd be told to eat alone on Thanksgiving. But what Emily didn't know was that I wouldn't be alone for long, and she'd never forget who showed up at my door. Before I share what happened next, please subscribe to my channel and join our community of strong voices. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of standing up for yourself, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what does Thanksgiving mean to you? Your support helps me share more stories like this. My name is Helen and I'm 68 years old. For as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving was my day. I'd wake up before dawn, put on my favorite apron and start the turkey. My late husband George used to say I could feed an army with just a bag of potatoes and a little love. After he passed, I kept the tradition alive for our son David and eventually his wife Emily. Emily and I never quite saw eye to eye. She was polite but always distant, her smiles never quite reaching her eyes. So I tried. I baked her favorite pies, remembered her birthday, and offered to babysit their two little ones, Lily and Max, whenever she needed a break. I thought in time we'd become family. But over the years, I noticed the invitations grew fewer. Emily started hosting more holidays herself, and I was asked to bring a dish, instead of being the one in charge. I told myself it was just the way things go. Children grow up, families change. But deep down, I felt myself slipping further from the center of their lives. This year, I'd been looking forward to Thanksgiving more than ever. I'd spent days planning the menu, polishing the silver, and even bought a new tablecloth. I imagined Lily and Max running through the house, David carving the turkey, Emily laughing at the kids' jokes. I wanted to believe we were still a family. But that morning, as I checked my phone, everything changed. Emily's message was short, almost clinical. "Helen, it's best if you eat at home this year. We want a quiet Thanksgiving, just us. Please understand." No explanation. No invitation. Just a polite dismissal. I called David, hoping for a different answer. He didn't pick up. I left a message, my voice trembling. "David, it's Mom. I got Emily's text. Is everything all right? Please call me." I waited, staring at the phone, willing it to ring. It never did. I sat at the kitchen table, the one I'd set for a feast, and felt the weight of loneliness settle over me. I thought about all the years I'd spent making sure no one ever felt left out, and now here I was, uninvited, unwanted, and alone. But as the tears threatened to fall, I remembered something George used to say, "Helen, you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone make you small." I wiped my eyes, stood up, and looked around my kitchen. If Emily wanted me to eat alone, so be it. But I wouldn't let her decide what kind of Thanksgiving I'd have. Not this year. I wandered through my quiet house, the echoes of past Thanksgivings swirling around me. I could almost hear George's laughter, the clatter of little feet, the hum of conversation as family and friends gathered around my table. Now the only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall and the faint sizzle of the turkey in the oven. I tried to distract myself by tidying up, but every dish I put away reminded me of a meal shared, a story told, a memory made. I opened the linen closet and ran my fingers over the new tablecloth I'd bought just for today. Still folded, still waiting for a celebration that would never come. I sat down and let myself cry just for a moment. I thought about calling my sister, but she lived 2 states away and had her own family to fuss over. I thought about driving to the church for the community dinner, but the idea of sitting with strangers, pretending I wasn't heartbroken, felt too heavy to bear. But as the morning sun streamed through the window, I remembered the words I'd whispered to myself so many times since George passed. "You are not invisible. You are not done." I took a deep breath and stood up, determination settling in my bones. I decided I wouldn't let this day be defined by rejection. If I couldn't be with my family, I'd find another way to make it meaningful. I pulled out my old address book and started flipping through the pages, looking for names I hadn't called in too long. Old friends, neighbors, people I knew might be alone today too. I dialed Marjorie first, my friend since high school. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Helen. Happy Thanksgiving, dear. How are you? I hesitated, not wanting to sound pitiful. Well, Marjorie, it looks like I'll be eating alone this year. David and Emily, they want a quiet holiday. There was a pause, then a huff. Nonsense. You shouldn't be alone. Why don't you come over here? Or better yet, let's do something together. I bet we're not the only ones left out this year. A spark of hope flickered in my chest. You know, Marjorie, that's the best idea I've heard all day. We made a plan to call a few more friends and neighbors, to see who else might need a place to go. As I hung up, I felt lighter, the ache in my chest easing just a bit. Maybe this Thanksgiving wouldn't be what I'd planned, but it could still be something special. But just as I started to set the table for two, there was a knock at my door, a sound that would change everything. I froze, my heart thumping in my chest. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it. A knock on Thanksgiving morning when everyone was supposed to be with their families. I wiped my hands on my apron and hurried to the door, hope and nerves tangling in my stomach. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Mrs. Alvarez from next door, bundled in her coat, holding a small covered dish. Her eyes were kind but a little sad. Helen, I hope I'm not intruding. I heard you were alone today. My daughter called to say she couldn't make it, so I thought maybe we could keep each other company. I felt tears prick my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. You're not intruding at all, Mrs. Alvarez. Please come in. I was just about to set the table. She smiled, relief washing over her face. Call me Rosa, please. And I brought my famous sweet potato casserole. It's not Thanksgiving without it. We laughed, and for the first time all morning the house felt a little less empty. As we set the table together, I realized how many people might be spending this day alone, not by choice but by circumstance. Maybe I thought this was my chance to turn my own pain into something good. Rosa and I sat down, shared stories, and soon the house was filled with the warmth of real conversation. She told me about her late husband, about her grandchildren she missed, about the little joys and big sorrows that made up her life. I listened and I shared my own stories too. Just as we were about to serve the turkey, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Mr. Harris from down the street, holding a pie and looking sheepish. I heard you ladies were having a little gathering. Mind if I join? Rosa and I exchanged a look and burst out laughing. The more the merrier, I said, waving him in. As the afternoon wore on, more neighbors trickled in, each with a dish, a story, or just a need for company. My house, once so quiet and lonely, was suddenly alive with laughter, the clink of glasses, and the smell of a dozen different Thanksgiving recipes. I realized then that sometimes the family you need isn't always the one you're born with. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you least expect it. But as the sun began to set and the laughter grew louder, I couldn't help but wonder, what would David and Emily think if they knew I wasn't alone after all? And who else might show up at my door before the day was done? As Helen's home fills with unexpected guests, a familiar face from her past appears at the door. Someone who will change the course of her Thanksgiving and her life forever. The sun was dipping low, painting the kitchen in golden light as laughter echoed through my house. Rosa and Mr. Harris swapped stories about their grandkids, and I found myself smiling more than I had in months. The table was crowded with food and warmth, and for the first time that day I felt truly grateful. Just as I was pouring coffee, the doorbell rang again. The room fell quiet, everyone glancing at each other. I wiped my hands and hurried to the door, my heart fluttering with curiosity. Who else could it be? When I opened the door, I nearly dropped the coffee pot. Standing on my porch was my younger sister, Evelyn, bundled in a bright red scarf, her eyes shining with mischief and something softer, maybe relief. Evelyn, I gasped, pulling her into a hug. What on earth are you doing here? I thought you were spending Thanksgiving with your daughter in Chicago. She laughed, squeezing me tight. Plans changed. The kids got the flu and I didn't want to be in the way. I figured you'd have a house full, but when I called and got no answer, I thought I'd take my chances. I led her inside, introducing her to Rosa and Mr. Harris, who welcomed her like an old friend. Evelyn set down her overnight bag and pulled out a tin of her famous lemon bars. I couldn't show up empty-handed, she said with a wink. As we sat down together, the conversation grew livelier. Evelyn had always been the life of the party, and soon she had everyone laughing with stories from our childhood, like the time we tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner for our parents and nearly set the kitchen on fire. I watched my guests, some old friends, some new, sharing food and laughter, and I felt a deep sense of peace. Maybe this wasn't the Thanksgiving I'd planned, but it was turning into something beautiful. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't help but wonder about David and Emily. Would they call? Would they care that I wasn't alone? And what would happen if they found out just how much joy had found its way into my home, despite their decision to leave me out? Just as I was clearing the dishes, my phone buzzed with a message from David. My hands shook as I picked it up, not knowing what to expect. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. For a moment I was afraid to look. Afraid it would be another polite dismissal or worse, nothing at all. But curiosity got the better of me and I opened the message. "Hi Mom. Hope you're doing okay. Emily says you got her message. We just wanted a quiet day with the kids. Maybe we can stop by this weekend? Let me know." I read it twice, feeling a strange mix of relief and disappointment. At least he'd reached out, but the words felt distant, almost as if he was checking a box. I set the phone down, forcing myself to focus on the laughter and warmth filling my home. Evelyn noticed the look on my face. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Everything all right, Helen?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "It's David. He and Emily just wanted a quiet day. They might come by this weekend." Rosa, ever the optimist, chimed in. "Well, they're missing out. This is the best Thanksgiving I've had in years." Mr. Harris raised his glass. "To unexpected company and new traditions." We all clinked our glasses and I felt a wave of gratitude for these people who had shown up when I needed them most. The ache in my heart softened, replaced by a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in a long time. As the evening settled in, Evelyn and I slipped away to the kitchen to make tea. She leaned against the counter, watching me with a knowing smile. "You know, Helen, sometimes the family we choose is just as important as the family we're born with." I nodded, stirring honey into my cup. "I just wish David understood that. I wish he knew how much it hurts to be left out." Evelyn hugged me, her voice gentle. "Maybe he will in time. For now, look at what you've built here. You turned a lonely day into a celebration." Before I could answer, there was another knock at the door. I glanced at Evelyn, my heart skipping a beat. Who could that be at this hour? He grinned. "Only one way to find out." I wiped my hands and headed for the door, not knowing that the next guest would bring a surprise that would change everything. I opened the door, expecting maybe another neighbor or a friend who'd heard about our impromptu gathering. But instead, I found myself face to face with someone I hadn't seen in years. My old friend and neighbor, Pastor Williams. He stood on the porch, bundled in his long coat, holding a basket filled with fresh rolls and homemade jam. His eyes sparkled with warmth and a hint of mischief. "Helen, I hope I'm not intruding. I was on my way home from visiting the nursing home and I saw all the cars outside. I thought, now there's a house that knows how to celebrate Thanksgiving." I laughed, feeling a rush of joy. "Pastor Williams, you are always welcome here. Please come in out of the cold." He stepped inside, shaking the snow from his boots. The room lit up with greetings and laughter as he made his way around, hugging Rosa, shaking hands with Mr. Harris and giving Evelyn a warm smile. He set his basket on the table and looked at me with genuine affection. "Helen, you've always had a gift for bringing people together. I see that hasn't changed." We all gathered around the table once more, sharing stories and memories. Pastor Williams led us in a simple prayer of gratitude, and for a moment the room was filled with a peaceful silence, a sense of belonging that wrapped around us like a warm blanket. As the night wore on, I realized that my home, once so quiet and lonely, had become a haven for those who needed it most. The laughter, the stories, the shared meal. It was everything Thanksgiving was meant to be. But as I watched my guests, I couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. Would David and Emily ever understand what they'd missed? And would I have the courage to tell them how much this day had meant to me? As I cleared the last of the dishes and said goodnight to my friends, I felt a new sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new tradition. One built on kindness, resilience, and the simple act of opening my door. But as I turned out the lights and headed to bed, my phone buzzed with a new message, this time from Emily herself. What does Emily's message say, and how will it affect Helen's newfound sense of belonging and the future of her family? I sat on the edge of my bed, the glow of my phone lighting up the dark room. My heart thudded as I opened Emily's message, unsure if I was ready for whatever words she'd chosen this time. "Helen, I hope you're all right. David told me you were alone today. I know this isn't what you wanted, but we just needed some space. I hope you understand. Maybe we can talk soon." I stared at the screen, reading the message over and over. There was no apology, no invitation, just a polite distance, as if I were a neighbor instead of family. I felt a pang of sadness, but also a strange sense of clarity. For years, I tried to fit myself into the space Emily allowed, always hoping things would change. Tonight, surrounded by friends and laughter, I realized I didn't need to beg for a place at their table. I could build my own. I set the phone aside and pulled the covers up, letting the warmth of the day settle over me. I thought about Rose's sweet potato casserole, Evelyn's lemon bars, Pastor William's gentle prayer. I thought about the laughter, the stories, the way my house had come alive again. I drifted off to sleep with a smile, feeling more at peace than I had in a long time. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds outside my window and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Evelyn was already up, humming as she set out breakfast. "Morning, Helen. Did you sleep well?" I nodded, pouring myself a cup. "Better than I have in ages. Thank you for being here, Evie." She smiled, her eyes soft. "You know I wouldn't be anywhere else." We sat together, enjoying the quiet, when there was a knock at the door. I glanced at the clock. Barely 9 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, but after yesterday I was ready for anything. When I opened the door, I found Lily and Max, my grandchildren, standing on the porch, bundled in their coats, holding a homemade card. Behind them was David, looking sheepish, and Emily, her expression unreadable. "Grandma, we made you something," Lily chirped, holding out the card with a big, hopeful grin. I knelt down, my heart swelling. "Thank you, sweetheart. Come in, all of you. Breakfast is ready." As they stepped inside, I realized this was my chance. Not just to welcome them, but to show them what family really meant. The children rushed in, their cheeks rosy from the cold, and Evelyn greeted them with open arms. David followed, his eyes darting around the kitchen, taking in the remnants of last night's feast. Emily lingered in the doorway, her hands tucked into her coat pockets, her gaze uncertain. I set the card on the table and knelt to hug Lily and Max. "I missed you both so much yesterday. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?" Lily nodded, her curls bouncing. "We made cookies, but it was kinda quiet." Max piped up, "Can we have pie for breakfast, Grandma?" I laughed, ruffling his hair. "I think that can be arranged." David cleared his throat, shifting awkwardly. "Mom, I'm sorry we didn't call last night. The kids wanted to see you this morning and, well, we thought we'd stop by." I smiled, trying to keep my voice gentle. "I'm glad you did. There's plenty of food left and you're always welcome here." Emily finally stepped inside, her eyes meeting mine for just a moment. "Helen, I hope it's all right." The kids insisted. I nodded, gesturing to the table. "Of course. Please sit down. There's coffee, tea, and more pie than we can eat in a week." As we all gathered around the table, the tension slowly began to melt. Evelyn told a funny story about our childhood Thanksgivings, and soon the kids were giggling, their mouths full of lemon bars and leftover turkey. David relaxed, joining in the laughter, and even Emily managed a small smile. For a while it felt almost normal, like the family I remembered before misunderstandings and distance crept in. I watched them, my heart full, and realized that sometimes the best way to heal old wounds is simply to open your door and let love do the rest. But as breakfast wound down, Emily set her mug down and looked at me, her expression serious. "Helen, can we talk? Just the two of us." The room grew quiet. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Of course. Let's go into the living room." As we left the kitchen, I glanced back at Evelyn, who gave me an encouraging nod. I didn't know what Emily wanted to say, but I knew this conversation could change everything. Emily and I sat across from each other in the living room, the morning light streaming through the window. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the worry in her eyes, the way she twisted her wedding ring around her finger. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Helen, I owe you an apology. I know yesterday hurt you, but I didn't mean for it to be so harsh. She paused, searching for the right words. "I've been overwhelmed. The kids' work, the holidays. Sometimes I feel like I can't keep up and I take it out on you. I'm sorry." Her words caught me off guard. I'd spent so long feeling pushed aside, I hadn't considered how much she might be struggling too. I reached over and took her hand. "Emily, I never wanted to make things harder for you. I just wanted to help, to be part of your lives. I miss the way things used to be." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I know. I think I was jealous sometimes. The kids adore you and you make everything look so easy." I felt like I was failing, and instead of asking for help, I pushed you away. I squeezed her hand, my own eyes misty. We all need help sometimes. And we all make mistakes. But family means forgiving each other and starting again. Emily let out a shaky laugh. Do you think we can start over? I smiled, hope blooming in my chest. I'd like nothing more. We sat together in silence, the weight of old hurts lifting. I realized that sometimes, the hardest conversations are the ones that heal us most. As we returned to the kitchen, the children ran to us, eager to show off their drawings. David looked at Emily, then at me, relief softening his features. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were truly a family again. But as we cleared the table and made plans for the weekend, my phone buzzed with a call from Marjorie. Her voice was breathless with excitement. Helen, you won't believe who's coming to town, and they want to see you. I pressed the phone to my ear, curiosity prickling through me. Marjorie, slow down. Who's coming to town? She laughed, her voice bubbling with excitement. Helen, you remember Clara Jenkins, don't you? She moved away years ago, but she's back for the holiday weekend. He called me this morning and asked about you. She said she's been thinking about old friends and wants to catch up. She's coming by this afternoon. I blinked in surprise. Clara and I had been inseparable in our younger days, but life had pulled us in different directions. We'd lost touch after George passed, and I'd always regretted letting that friendship fade. The thought of seeing her again filled me with a mix of nerves and anticipation. Clara Jenkins, I repeated, a smile tugging at my lips. I can't believe it. After all these years. Marjorie chuckled. She said she's bringing her famous apple cake. I told her you'd have the coffee ready. I laughed, feeling a flutter of excitement I hadn't felt in ages. Of course I will. Thank you, Marjorie. After I hung up, I turned to find Evelyn watching me from the kitchen doorway, a knowing smile on her face. Who was that? An old friend, I said, my voice soft with nostalgia. She's coming by this afternoon. I haven't seen her in over a decade. Evelyn grinned. Well, let's make sure the house is ready. And maybe you should wear that blue sweater, the one George always loved. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help but smile. As we tidied up, I felt a sense of anticipation building. The morning's tension with Emily had faded, replaced by the promise of reconnection and new beginnings. By noon, the house was sparkling, the coffee was brewing, and the scent of cinnamon and apples drifted through the air. The kids played in the living room, their laughter a sweet soundtrack to the day. David and Emily lingered, helping with chores and sharing stories, the awkwardness between us slowly dissolving. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart skipped a beat. I wiped my hands on my apron and hurried to the door, Evelyn at my side. I opened it to find Clara standing there, her hair a little grayer, her smile just as bright as I remembered. She held out a tin wrapped in a checkered cloth. Helen, it's been too long. I pulled her into a hug, tears stinging my eyes. Welcome home, Clara. As she stepped inside, I knew this visit would be more than just a trip down memory lane. It would be the start of something new for both of us. Clara stepped into the warmth of my home, her eyes shining as she took in the scene. Children's drawings on the fridge, the scent of coffee and cinnamon, the gentle hum of family life. She set her apple cake on the counter and turned to me, her hands trembling just a little. It feels like yesterday, doesn't it? She said, her voice thick with emotion. All those years of laughter, late-night talks, and dreams we thought would never end. I smiled, feeling the years melt away. I've missed you, Clara. I really have. Evelyn came over, giving Clara a warm hug. It's good to see you again. You haven't changed a bit. Clara laughed, brushing a tear from her cheek. You're too kind, Evie. I see you two are still a team. We settled around the kitchen table, pouring coffee and slicing into Clara's apple cake. The children peeked in, curious about the new guest, and Clara charmed them with stories about their mother's childhood mischief. Even Emily, who had been quiet all morning, found herself drawn into the conversation, her guard slowly dropping. As we reminisced, Clara's eyes grew distant. You know, Helen, after I moved away, I always meant to call. But life got busy and then I heard about George. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We all lose touch sometimes. But you're here now, and that's what matters. She smiled, relief softening her features. Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about what matters most. Family, friends, community. I want to be part of your life again if you'll have me. Tears pricked my eyes. Of course, Clara. There's always a place for you here. The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, old stories, and new memories. I felt the circle of my life widening, the ache of loneliness replaced by the comfort of connection. But as the sun began to set, Clara grew quiet. She glanced at me, her expression serious. Helen, there's something else I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago. My heart skipped a beat. I braced myself, not knowing what secret she was about to share. The room seemed to hush as Clara looked down at her hands, gathering her thoughts. Evelyn reached over, giving her a reassuring squeeze. I waited, my heart thumping, sensing that whatever Clara was about to say had been weighing on her for years. She took a shaky breath. Helen, after George passed, I wanted to come back and help you. I even started writing letters, but I never sent them. I was afraid you'd be angry or that too much time had passed. But the truth is I was struggling too. I lost my husband the year after you lost George, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I felt so alone. Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt my own throat tighten. Oh, Clara, I wish I'd known. We could have helped each other. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I know that now. I let my pride and my fear keep me away from the people who mattered most. I'm so sorry, Helen. I stood and wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight. You're here now. That's all that matters. We can't change the past, but we can start again. Clara hugged me back, her shoulders shaking with relief. Evelyn joined us, and for a moment the three of us stood together, bound by old memories and new forgiveness. When we finally sat back down, the room felt lighter, the air charged with possibility. Clara smiled through her tears. Thank you, Helen, for giving me a second chance. I squeezed her hand. We all need one sooner or later. As the evening settled in, the house filled with the glow of lamps and the sound of children's laughter. David and Emily joined us, drawn by the warmth and the promise of a fresh start. For the first time in a long while I felt whole. But as we cleared the table and prepared for the night, Evelyn pulled me aside, her voice low. Helen, I think it's time you told David and Emily how you really feel. About Thanksgiving, about family, about everything. I nodded, knowing she was right. Tomorrow I would find my voice, and maybe, just maybe, help my family find theirs too. Will Helen finally share her true feelings with David and Emily, and will it bring her family closer, or drive them further apart? I barely slept that night, my mind swirling with memories and worries. I replayed every moment of the past 2 days. Emily's message, the unexpected guests, Clara's confession, and the laughter that had filled my home. But Evelyn's words echoed loudest. It's time you told David and Emily how you really feel. The next morning, I woke early and watched the sunrise from my kitchen window, a mug of coffee warming my hands. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting everyone else first, swallowing my hurt and hoping things would get better on their own. But I knew now that silence only built walls, and I was tired of feeling invisible in my own family. After breakfast, I found David and Emily in the living room, the kids playing quietly nearby. I took a deep breath and sat down across from them, my heart pounding. David, Emily, can we talk for a minute? I asked, my voice gentle but firm. They exchanged a glance, worry flickering in their eyes. David nodded. Of course, Mom. What's on your mind? I looked at them, my hands folded in my lap. I want you to know how much I love you, both of you. And I love these children more than anything. But when I got that message on Thanksgiving telling me to eat alone, it broke my heart. I've spent my whole life making sure no one ever felt left out, and for the first time I felt like I didn't belong. Emily's eyes filled with tears and David looked down, shame coloring his cheeks. I pressed on, my voice trembling but strong. I know things change. I know you want your own traditions. But family isn't about perfection or doing things the way we always have. It's about showing up for each other even when it's hard. I want to be part of your lives, not just on holidays but every day. For a moment, the room was silent except for the children's laughter in the background. I waited, my heart in my throat, hoping I hadn't said too much, or too little. Emily reached over and took my hand, her voice thick with emotion. Helen, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to ask for help. I felt overwhelmed and I pushed you away instead of letting you in. David nodded, his eyes shining. We love you, Mom. We don't want you to feel left out. We got lost along the way. I squeezed their hands, relief and hope flooding through me. We all get lost sometimes. But we can find our way back. Together. As we sat there, the morning sun streaming in, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I believed that healing was possible. But as we hugged and wiped away tears, I knew there was still more to say. About boundaries, about respect, about building new traditions that included everyone. And I was finally ready to have those conversations. We sat together in the living room, the morning light painting soft patterns on the rug. For a while no one spoke. The children's laughter drifted in from the hallway, a gentle reminder of what truly mattered. I took a deep breath, feeling the courage that had carried me through so many storms. "David, Emily," I began, "I know life gets busy. I know you want to make your own memories with the kids. But I want to be part of those memories too. I want to help not just on holidays but whenever you need me. I want to be the kind of grandmother who's present, not just a name on a card or a voice on the phone." Emily wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. "I think I was afraid to let you in, Helen. I thought you'd judge me or that I'd never live up to your example. But seeing you with the neighbors, with Claire and Evelyn, I realized you just want to love us. I'm sorry I made you feel like an outsider." David reached for my hand, his grip strong and steady. "We've been so focused on doing things our way we forgot how much you mean to us. I don't want the kids to miss out on the love and wisdom you have to give." I smiled, my heart swelling with hope. "Let's start over. Let's make new traditions, ones that belong to all of us. And let's promise to talk even when it's hard." Emily nodded, relief softening her features. "I'd like that. Maybe next year we can host Thanksgiving together. Or better yet, let's have a big family dinner once a month. No special occasion needed." The idea made me laugh, the sound light and free. "I'd love that. And I'll bring the pie." We hugged, the three of us, and I felt the old wounds begin to heal. It wasn't perfect and it wouldn't be easy, but it was a start. Evelyn peeked in from the kitchen, a knowing smile on her face. "Everything all right in here?" I nodded, wiping my eyes. "Better than all right, Evie. We're finding our way back." He grinned. "Good. Because Claire and I are planning a Sunday supper and you're all invited." We laughed, the sound filling the house with hope and possibility. For the first time in a long time I felt like I truly belonged. But as the day went on and the house filled with the smells of coffee and cinnamon, I realized there was still one more conversation I needed to have. This time with myself. That afternoon, after the house had quieted and the children were napping, I found a moment alone in my favorite chair by the window. The world outside was calm, sunlight glinting off the last golden leaves. I wrapped myself in a soft blanket and let the events of the past days wash over me. For so long I'd measured my worth by how much I could do for others. How many meals I cooked, how many holidays I hosted, how well I kept the peace. But sitting there I realized something important. I mattered not just for what I gave but for who I was. My feelings, my needs, my voice, they were just as important as anyone else's. I thought about the courage it took to speak my truth to David and Emily, to admit my hurt and ask for more. I thought about the strength it took to open my door to neighbors and friends, to let love in when I felt most alone. And I promised myself that I would never again let anyone make me feel small or invisible. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. I walked to the kitchen where Evelyn and Clara were laughing over a recipe and joined them, my heart full of gratitude. "Ladies," I said, "I think it's time we made some new memories. Together." They smiled and we set to work, filling the house with the smells of baking bread and fresh coffee. As the afternoon sun streamed in, I felt a sense of peace settle over me, a quiet confidence that whatever came next, I was ready. But as we sat down to share a simple meal, my phone buzzed with a message from Pastor Williams. "Helen, I have an idea for something special. Can I stop by tomorrow to talk?" I looked at my friends, excitement bubbling up inside me. Maybe this Thanksgiving was just the beginning of something even bigger. What is Pastor Williams' special idea, and how will it shape the next chapter of Helen's journey and her growing circle of family and friends? The next morning I woke to the gentle sound of rain tapping against the window. The house was quiet, the kind of peaceful silence that comes after a storm, inside and out. I made a pot of coffee and set out a plate of Clara's apple cake, waiting for Pastor Williams to arrive. He knocked right on time, his umbrella dripping on the porch. I welcomed him in and he shook off the rain with a smile. "Helen, I hope I'm not disturbing you too early." "Not at all, Pastor. Come and have some cake. What's this special idea you wanted to talk about?" He settled at the kitchen table, his eyes bright with excitement. Helen, after seeing what you did on Thanksgiving, how you brought people together, how you turned loneliness into community, I started thinking, what if we made it a regular thing? Not just for the holidays but every month. A community supper, open to anyone who needs a meal or a little company. I blinked, surprised and moved. A monthly supper? That's a beautiful idea. There are so many people in this town who could use a place to belong. He nodded. And I can help with the church hall, and we can ask folks to bring a dish if they're able. But I'd need someone to help organize it. Someone who knows how to make people feel at home. I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. You want me to help? Pastor Williams smiled. Helen, I can't think of anyone better. I looked around my kitchen at the memories of the past few days and realized how much I wanted this. Not just for myself but for everyone who'd ever felt left out or alone. I'd be honored, Pastor. Let's do it. We spent the next hour making plans. Setting a date, making a list of people to invite, and dreaming up ways to make each supper special. By the time he left, the rain had stopped and the sun was peeking through the clouds. Evelyn and Clara joined me at the table, their faces lighting up as I shared the news. A community supper? Evelyn grinned. Count me in. I'll make my famous chicken and dumplings. Clara laughed. And I'll bring dessert. This is going to be wonderful, Helen. As we started calling friends and neighbors, I felt hope blooming in my heart. Maybe this was the new beginning I'd been searching for. A way to turn my own pain into something beautiful for others. But as the day wore on and the first RSVPs came in, I realized that opening your heart to a community meant facing new challenges and new joys I'd never imagined. The phone rang all afternoon. Some calls were from neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years, their voices bright with excitement. Others were from folks I barely knew. Mrs. Parker from 2 streets over, the young couple who'd just moved in, even Mr. Dorsey, who was known for keeping to himself. Each one said the same thing: thank you for thinking of us. We'd love to come. Evelyn and Clara helped me make a list of dishes and volunteers. The kitchen table was soon covered in notepads, recipes, and a growing sense of anticipation. I could feel the energy building the way it always did before a big family gathering. Only this time the family was bigger than ever. That evening, as we sat together over a simple supper, I felt a sense of purpose settle over me. I realized that the ache I'd felt on Thanksgiving, the loneliness, the rejection, had become the very thing that pushed me to reach out to build something new. Maybe that was the lesson in all of this. Sometimes the hardest moments are the ones that open the door to something better. As the days passed, the whole town seemed to come alive with the idea. The church offered their hall, the local bakery donated bread, and even the high school students volunteered to help set up tables and serve food. The children made colorful signs to hang on the doors. Everyone welcome. David and Emily stopped by to help too. Emily brought a casserole and a shy smile, and David offered to pick up anyone who needed a ride. I watched them work side by side with Evelyn and Clara, and I felt the old wounds healing, replaced by a new sense of unity. The night before the first supper, I stood in the empty church hall, looking at the rows of tables, the decorations the children had made, and the kitchen bustling with volunteers. I felt a lump in my throat, part nerves, part gratitude. Evelyn came up beside me, her arm around my shoulders. You did this, Helen. You turned one lonely Thanksgiving into something that will touch so many lives. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. We did this. All of us. But as I looked out at the hall, I wondered, would people really show up? Would the community embrace this new tradition, or would old habits and old hurts keep them away? I took a deep breath, ready to find out. The evening of the first community supper arrived, and my nerves fluttered like butterflies in my stomach. I arrived early with Evelyn and Clara, the 3 of us bustling around the church hall, setting out tablecloths, arranging flowers, and making sure every chair was in place. The kitchen was alive with the sounds of laughter and clinking dishes as volunteers finished their preparations. As the clock struck 6, I stood by the door, my heart pounding. For a moment, I worried that no one would come, that all our work and hope would be met with empty seats. But then, slowly at first, people began to arrive. Mrs. Parker came in with her famous green bean casserole, her eyes shining with excitement. The young couple from down the street brought homemade bread, their little boy clutching a hand-drawn sign that read, "Welcome, friends." Mr. Dorsey, usually so reserved, arrived with a pie and a shy smile. Soon, the hall was filled with neighbors greeting each other, sharing stories, and finding seats at tables that had once seemed too big for just one family. David and Emily arrived with the kids, who ran straight to the crafts table, their laughter echoing through the hall. Emily caught my eye and smiled, a real, grateful smile that made my heart swell. Even Pastor Williams looked moved as he watched the room fill with warmth and connection. We gathered everyone for a short blessing, and as I looked around at the faces, some familiar, some new, I felt a wave of gratitude so strong it brought tears to my eyes. This was more than a meal. It was a new beginning, a chance for all of us to belong. As the evening wore on, the hall buzzed with conversation and laughter. People who had once been strangers shared recipes and memories, and the children put on a little play they'd made up on the spot. I realized that the ache of that lonely Thanksgiving had been replaced by something far greater, a sense of purpose, of community, of hope. When the last dish was washed and the tables cleared, I stood in the quiet hall, Evelyn and Clara by my side. "We did it," I whispered, hardly believing it was real. Evelyn hugged me tight. "This is just the beginning, Helen. Just wait and see." As we turned out the lights and stepped into the cool night air, I felt a peace settle over me. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I wasn't alone. Not anymore. But as we walked home, Clara slipped her arm through mine and said, "Helen, I have an idea for the next supper. Something that might bring even more people together." What is Clara's new idea, and how will it help Helen's community suppers grow into something even more meaningful? The next morning, the world felt fresh and full of possibility. I woke to the sound of birds outside my window and the memory of laughter echoing from the church hall. As I made coffee, Clara joined me at the kitchen table, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Helen, I couldn't sleep last night," she said, her voice bubbling with energy. "I kept thinking about how wonderful the supper was, and how many people in town might still be too shy or proud to come." I nodded, understanding all too well. It's hard to ask for company, especially when you're used to being alone. Clara leaned in, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "What if we made the next supper a bring a neighbor night? Everyone who comes has to invite someone new, someone who's never been before, or someone they know could use a little kindness." I smiled, the idea blooming in my heart. "That's brilliant, Clara. It's a way to reach people who might never come on their own." Evelyn, who'd been listening from the doorway, clapped her hands. "And we could make it fun. Maybe a potluck with everyone sharing a favorite family recipe. We could even have a little contest for the best dish." The three of us spent the morning planning, our excitement growing with every new idea. We made a list of neighbors who might need an extra nudge: Mr. Harris, who'd lost his wife last year, the single mother who lived above the bakery, the retired teacher who always waved but never stopped to chat. By lunchtime we had a plan. We'd print invitations, ask the children to help deliver them, and encourage everyone to bring a friend. The next community supper would be bigger, warmer, and even more welcoming. As we worked, I felt a sense of purpose settle over me. I realized that what had started as a way to heal my own loneliness was becoming something much greater. A movement of kindness, a web of connection that could catch anyone who needed it. But as we finished our planning, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message that made her face fall. She handed it to me, her voice trembling. "Helen, it's from David. He says Emily's mother is coming to visit, and she wants to meet you. Today." My heart skipped a beat. I'd never met Emily's mother, and I knew she'd always been a source of tension. I wondered what this visit would bring, and whether it would threaten the fragile peace we'd just begun to build. I stared at Evelyn's phone, my mind racing. Emily's mother, Patricia, was a name I'd heard many times but never a face I'd met. Emily had always spoken of her with a mix of reverence and anxiety. Patricia was known for her sharp opinions and high standards. I wondered what she'd think of me, of our family, of the new traditions we were building. Evelyn squeezed my hand. "You'll be fine, Helen. Just be yourself. That's more than enough." I nodded, though my nerves fluttered. I suppose it's time we finally met. We spent the afternoon tidying up the house and preparing a simple lunch. Clara offered to stay, but I could see she didn't want to intrude. "Call me if you need backup," she whispered with a wink as she left. Just after noon, David's car pulled up. Emily stepped out first, smoothing her dress, followed by Patricia, a tall woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a crisp navy coat. She surveyed the house with a critical eye before offering a polite, if reserved, smile. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for having me. she said, her voice formal. Please call me Helen, I replied, ushering her inside. We're glad you could join us. We sat in the living room, the air thick with small talk. Patricia asked about the children, about the neighborhood, about the weather. I answered as warmly as I could, but I could feel her measuring every word, every gesture. Finally, over lunch, the conversation turned to Thanksgiving. Emily glanced at me, her voice tentative. Mom, Helen hosted a wonderful supper at the church last night. The whole community came together. Patricia raised an eyebrow. A community supper? That's ambitious. I suppose it's good for people to have somewhere to go. I smiled, choosing kindness. It was more than that, Patricia. It was a chance for people to feel seen, to belong. Sometimes that's all anyone really needs. She studied me for a moment, her expression softening just a little. I suppose you're right. It's easy to forget how important those small acts of kindness can be. The rest of the meal passed more easily. Patricia even complimented the pie, and by the time she left, I sensed a thaw in her reserve. As she shook my hand at the door, she said quietly, "You have a lovely home, Helen. And a lovely family." After she left, Emily hugged me, relief in her eyes. "Thank you, Helen. I know she can be a lot, but I think she liked you." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. We all just want the same thing, Emily. To feel welcome. To belong. But as the afternoon faded, I realized that building bridges, between families, between neighbors, even between old friends, wasn't always easy. Still, I was more determined than ever to keep trying. And as I sat down to write out invitations for the next supper, I wondered who else in our little town might be waiting for someone to reach out and say, "You're welcome here." That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet, I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of invitations and a pen. Evelyn joined me, her presence a comfort as I wrote each name with care. Neighbors, old friends, even a few people I'd only met in passing. I thought about Clara's idea, about how a simple invitation could change someone's day or even their life. As I finished the last card, I looked up to see Emily standing in the doorway, her face thoughtful. "Helen, I wanted to thank you again for today. My mother, she's not always easy, but you handled her with such grace. I think she saw a side of our family she's never seen before." I smiled, feeling a quiet pride. "We're all learning, Emily. That's what families do." She nodded, then hesitated. "Do you think I could help with the next supper? Maybe I could organize the kids' activities or help with the invitations." My heart swelled. "I'd love that. The more hands, the better." As we worked together, I realized how much had changed in just a few short weeks. The walls that once stood between us were coming down, replaced by trust and a shared sense of purpose. Even David, who'd been so distant, offered to help deliver invitations with the children the next day. Later, as I tucked the last invitation into an envelope, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't known in years. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not grand gestures, but small acts of kindness repeated over and over, until they built something strong and lasting. Before bed, I called Clara to share the good news. She laughed, her voice full of joy. "Helen, I knew you'd make this work. Just wait until you see how many people show up next time." As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about all the doors that would open, all the hearts that would be touched, just because someone took the time to say, "You're welcome here." But as the next supper approached, a new challenge appeared. One that would test everything we'd built and remind me that even the strongest communities need a little help sometimes. What unexpected challenge will Helen and her friends face at the next community supper? And will their newfound unity be enough to overcome it? The week of the next community supper arrived with a flurry of excitement and a hint of worry. The invitations had gone out and the response was overwhelming. People I'd never met stopped me at the market to say they were coming, and the children buzzed with plans for games and crafts. Even Mr. Dorsey, who'd once kept to himself, offered to bring his famous cornbread. But as the day drew near, the weather turned. A cold front swept in, bringing icy rain and the threat of snow. The church hall's old furnace sputtered and groaned, and Pastor Williams called with bad news. "Helen, the heating's gone out. The repairman says it might not be fixed in time for the supper." My heart sank. The thought of canceling after all our hard work was almost too much to bear. I gathered Evelyn, Clara, and Emily in my kitchen. The four of us huddled over mugs of tea as we tried to figure out what to do. "We can't just call it off," Emily said, determination in her eyes. People are counting on this. Evelyn nodded. What if we move it to someone's house? Or split into smaller groups? Clara shook her head. There are too many of us now. No one house could hold everyone. I stared out the window watching the sleet tap against the glass. For a moment, I felt the old ache of loneliness creeping in, the fear that all our efforts would be undone by something as simple as a broken furnace. But then I remembered the lesson I'd learned on Thanksgiving. When you open your heart, help has a way of finding you. I picked up the phone and started calling around. The community center was booked, but the school gym was available. The principal, Mrs. Lee, was more than happy to let us use it and even offered to help set up. The bakery donated extra bread and the high school students volunteered to help move tables and chairs. By the end of the day we had a new plan and a new sense of hope. The supper would go on just in a different place. As we spread the word, I realized that the true strength of a community isn't in its buildings but in its people. And as the snow began to fall, I knew we were ready for whatever came next. The morning of the supper dawned cold and bright, the world outside blanketed in fresh snow. I woke early, nerves fluttering in my stomach, and bundled up to head to the school gym. Evelyn and Claire met me there, their arms full of decorations and casseroles, their cheeks pink from the chill. Inside, the gym echoed with the sounds of volunteers setting up tables, arranging chairs, and stringing up the children's colorful signs. Emily arrived with the kids, who immediately set to work making centerpieces out of pine cones and ribbon. Even Mr. Dorsey showed up early, his cornbread still warm from the oven. As the afternoon wore on, the gym filled with the smells of home-cooked food and the hum of conversation. People arrived in boots and scarves, shaking off the cold and greeting each other with hugs and laughter. The sense of anticipation was electric. No one seemed to mind the change of venue. In fact, the new space felt even more welcoming, as if the whole town had come together to make it work. But just as we were about to serve dinner, the lights flickered and went out. For a moment, the room was plunged into darkness, and a hush fell over the crowd. I felt my heart sink. Could anything else go wrong? Then, from the back of the gym, someone called out, "I've got lanterns in my truck." Another voice chimed in, "I'll get the generator from the maintenance shed." Within minutes, people were moving with purpose, lighting candles, setting up lanterns, and running extension cords. The children squealed with delight as the gym filled with a warm, golden glow. Pastor Williams gathered everyone for a blessing, his voice steady and calm. "We may not have all the comforts we planned, but we have each other. And that's more than enough." As we served dinner by lantern light, I looked around at the faces. Some familiar, some new, all shining with gratitude and joy. The laughter, the stories, the sense of togetherness. It was everything I'd hoped for and more. Evelyn squeezed my hand, her eyes bright. "You did it, Helen. Even when things went wrong, you brought everyone together." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. We did it. All of us. But as the evening wore on and the snow continued to fall, I realized that the real test wasn't whether everything went perfectly, it was how we came together when things didn't go as planned. And as I watched neighbors helping neighbors, friends sharing food and stories, I knew we'd passed that test with flying colors. As the evening wore on, the gym glowed with lantern light and laughter. The children put on a little play they'd made up, and the adults swapped stories over pie and coffee. The snow outside kept falling, but inside, the warmth of community was stronger than ever. After dinner, I stood to thank everyone. My voice trembled with emotion as I looked out at the faces. Neighbors, friends, and even a few strangers who had become part of our story. Tonight didn't go as planned, but maybe that's the point. Life rarely does. What matters is that we show up for each other no matter what. The room erupted in applause and I felt tears prick my eyes. Clara hugged me tight and Evelyn squeezed my shoulder. Even Mr. Dorsey, who'd once been so reserved, stood up and said, "Helen's right. I haven't felt this close to my neighbors in years. Let's keep this going." As people began to gather their things and prepare for the snowy walk home, I noticed Emily standing by the door, her face thoughtful. She caught my eye and came over, her voice soft. "Helen, I'm so proud of you. I never realized how much one person could do to bring people together. Thank you for not giving up on us or on this town." I hugged her, my heart full. "Thank you for letting me in, Emily. That's all I ever wanted." David joined us, the kids bundled up and sleepy. "Mom, this was amazing. Next time let's host at our place. We want to be part of this too." I smiled, feeling the last pieces of my heart fall into place. I'd love that. As the last guests left and the gym grew quiet, I stood for a moment in the golden glow, letting the peace of the night settle over me. We'd face the test together and come out stronger for it. But as I gathered my things, Pastor Williams approached, a twinkle in his eye. Helen, I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The news about these suppers is spreading. Other towns want to know how we did it. Are you ready to share your story? I laughed, feeling a new adventure on the horizon. I think I am, Pastor. I think I finally am. With words spreading beyond her town, will Helen's story inspire others? And how will she handle the new attention and opportunities that come her way? The next morning I woke to a flurry of messages on my phone. Pastor Williams had been right. Word about our community suppers was spreading. There were emails from nearby towns, a message from the local newspaper, and even a voicemail from a radio host who wanted to interview me about how we'd brought everyone together. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, feeling both excited and a little overwhelmed. I'd never thought of myself as someone with a story worth sharing beyond my own front door. But as I read the messages, I realized that what we'd built here was bigger than just one supper or one family. It was hope that even in the hardest times, people could come together and make something beautiful. Evelyn came in, still in her robe, and peered over my shoulder. Looks like you're famous, Helen. I laughed, shaking my head. I'm just a woman who didn't want to eat alone on Thanksgiving. I never imagined it would come to this. He squeezed my hand. That's exactly why people want to hear from you. You remind them that anyone can make a difference. Later that day, Pastor Williams stopped by with a reporter from the local paper. The reporter, a young woman named Grace, asked thoughtful questions about how the suppers started, what challenges we'd faced, and what advice I'd give to others. I told her the truth. It started with a little heartbreak, a lot of hope, and the courage to open my door. The rest was just letting people in. One meal, one story, one act of kindness at a time. Grace smiled, jotting down notes. Do you think other towns could do the same? I nodded. Absolutely. All it takes is someone willing to reach out and a few people willing to say yes. By the end of the week, our story was in the paper and the phone rang even more. People from all over wanted to know how to start their own suppers, how to bring their communities together. I spent my evenings writing letters, sharing recipes, and offering encouragement. But as the attention grew, I worried, could I keep up? Would the heart of what we'd built get lost in all the excitement? I turned to Evelyn and Clara for advice, and together we made a plan to keep things simple, to always put kindness and connection first. As the days passed, I realized that spreading the light didn't mean losing myself. It meant sharing what I'd learned and trusting that others would carry it forward in their own way. But just as I was settling into this new chapter, I received a letter that made my heart skip a beat. A letter from someone I hadn't heard from in years, asking if they could come home. I held the letter in my hands, the familiar handwriting making my heart flutter with a mix of hope and nerves. It was from my niece, Jasmine, who had moved away years ago after a falling out with her mother, my late sister. We'd lost touch, and I'd always wondered how she was, whether she'd found happiness, whether she ever thought of home. I opened the envelope, my hands trembling. Dear Aunt Helen, I saw the article about your community suppers. I can't tell you how much it meant to me. I've been living in the city, feeling lost and alone, and reading about what you've built made me realize how much I miss family, and how much I miss you. If it's not too much, could I come visit? I'd love to see you and maybe help with the next supper. I want to find my way back if you'll have me. Love, Jasmine. Tears welled in my eyes as I read her words. I thought of the little girl who used to spend summers at my house, baking cookies and playing in the garden. I thought of the pain that had driven her away, and the courage it must have taken to reach out now. Evelyn found me at the table, the letter pressed to my chest. Helen, what is it? I handed her the letter, unable to speak. She read it, her eyes filling with tears. Oh, Helen. This is what it's all about, isn't it? Giving people a way back home. I nodded, my heart full. I have to call her. I have to tell her she's always welcome here. I dialed Jasmine's number, my hands shaking. When she answered, her voice was tentative but hopeful. Aunt Helen. Jasmine, sweetheart, you come home whenever you're ready. There's a place for you here always. She let out a shaky laugh. Thank you, Aunt Helen. I'll be there next week. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet, letting the joy and relief wash over me. I realized that the ripples of kindness we send out into the world have a way of coming back to us, sometimes when we least expect it. As the next supper approached, I found myself looking forward to Jasmine's visit, to welcoming her back into the fold, to showing her that no matter how far we wander, there's always a way home. But as I prepared for her arrival, I wondered, would she find what she was looking for? And would I be able to help her heal the wounds of the past? The day Jasmine was due to arrive, I found myself pacing the living room, straightening cushions and checking the clock every few minutes. Evelyn and Clara teased me gently, but I could see the excitement in their eyes too. It wasn't just about welcoming Jasmine home. It was about seeing the circle of family and community grow even wider. When the doorbell finally rang, I hurried to open it. There she was, older, a little tired around the eyes, but still the same Jasmine I remembered. She hesitated on the porch, uncertainty flickering across her face. I opened my arms. "Come here, sweetheart." She stepped into my embrace, and for a moment, all the years and distance melted away. "I missed you, Aunt Helen," she whispered. "I missed you too, honey. You're home now." Inside, Jasmine was welcomed with open arms. Evelyn made tea, Clara brought out her best cookies, and soon the kitchen was filled with laughter and stories. Jasmine shared about her life in the city, the good, the bad, and the lonely. She listened as we told her about the suppers, the neighbors, and the way the town had changed. That evening, as we prepared for the next community supper, Jasmine rolled up her sleeves and joined right in. She helped set tables, decorate the hall, and even taught the children a new game she'd learned. Watching her, I felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. She was finding her place again, and so was I. After dinner, Jasmine pulled me aside. "Aunt Helen, thank you for not giving up on me. I didn't realize how much I needed this, how much I needed family." I hugged her tight. "We all need a place to belong, Jasmine. And you'll always have one here." As the night drew to a close, I looked around at the faces. Old friends, new neighbors, and family returned. I realized that the light we'd kindled in our little town was spreading, one open door at a time. But as I drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed with a message from Grace, the reporter. "Helen, Channel 7 News wants to do a story on your suppers. They want to film the next one. Are you ready for the world to see what you've built?" I smiled, feeling a new adventure on the horizon. Maybe it was time to let the world see just how far a little kindness could go. With the world watching, will Helen's story inspire others? And can she keep the heart of her community strong as her circle of kindness grows? The days leading up to the next community supper were a whirlwind. Channel 7 News confirmed they'd be coming to film, and the whole town buzzed with excitement and nerves. I found myself fielding calls from neighbors offering to help, local businesses donating food, and even the mayor asking if he could say a few words. Evelyn and Clara helped me plan every detail, making sure the hall looked its best. Jasmine, now fully at home, took charge of the children's activities, her laughter ringing through the house as she taught them songs and games. Even Emily and David pitched in, their faces glowing with pride as they watched the community come together. The morning of the supper, I woke early, unable to sleep. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sun rise over the frosted rooftops. I thought about how far we'd come, from that lonely Thanksgiving when I'd been told to eat alone to this moment, when my home and heart were overflowing. As the afternoon arrived, the news crew set up their cameras, and the hall filled with the hum of anticipation. Neighbors arrived with casseroles and pies, children ran in with handmade signs, and the air was thick with the scent of cinnamon and hope. Before dinner, the reporter Grace pulled me aside. "Helen, what do you want people to know about what you've built here?" I smiled, my heart full. "I want them to know that it doesn't take much to change a life. Just an open door, a warm meal, and a willingness to listen. We all need a place to belong, and sometimes, all it takes is one person to say, 'You're welcome here.'" Grace nodded, her eyes shining. "That's beautiful, Helen. I think your story will inspire a lot of people." As the cameras rolled, I watched my family and friends, old and new, gather around the tables, sharing food and laughter. I saw Jasmine helping a shy neighbor find a seat, Emily pouring coffee for Mrs. Parker, and David leading the children in a silly song. The room glowed with warmth, not just from the lights, but from the love that filled every corner. When it was time for the blessing, Pastor Williams stood and spoke from the heart. "Tonight we celebrate not just a meal but a community. We celebrate the courage to reach out, the grace to forgive, and the joy of coming home. As we bowed our heads, I felt tears slip down my cheeks, not of sadness but of gratitude. I realized that my story had come full circle. I was no longer the woman left out on Thanksgiving. I was the heart of a family, the center of a community, and a beacon of hope for anyone who needed it. But as the evening wore on and the cameras packed up, I wondered, what would come next? Could we keep this spirit alive even as the world changed around us? After the blessing, the supper unfolded like a dream. The news crew moved quietly, capturing laughter, hugs, and the clatter of dishes. Jasmine led the children in a song, their voices rising sweet and clear above the hum of conversation. I watched as neighbors who'd once been strangers shared stories and recipes, their faces lit with the joy of belonging. Grace, the reporter, interviewed a few guests. Mrs. Parker, who spoke about how the suppers had given her a reason to look forward to each month. Mr. Dorsey, who admitted he'd never felt so close to his neighbors. And even Emily, who shared how much she'd learned about forgiveness and starting over. As the evening wore on, I found a quiet moment to step outside. The air was crisp, the stars bright above the snowy rooftops. I took a deep breath, letting the cold fill my lungs, and felt a peace settle over me. I thought of George, of all the years we'd shared, and whispered a thank you to the night sky. Inside, the supper was winding down. People lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth and light. Jasmine found me by the door, her cheeks flushed with happiness. Aunt Helen, I can't thank you enough. I feel like I've finally come home. I hugged her tight. You are home, Jasmine. And you always will be. Evelyn and Clara joined us, their arms full of leftover pie and laughter. You did it, Helen, Clara said, her eyes shining. You turned one lonely Thanksgiving into a whole new life, for all of us. I smiled, my heart overflowing. We did it together. That's what makes it so special. As the last guests left and the hall grew quiet, I stood for a moment in the doorway, looking out at the snow and the stars. I realized that the true miracle wasn't just the suppers or the news story or even the way the town had come together. The real miracle was the way love had found its way back into my life, one open door at a time. But as I turned out the lights and locked the door, I knew there was still one more thing I needed to do. One more message I wanted to share, not just with my town but with anyone who might be listening. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, the glow of the streetlights painting soft patterns on the wall. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the heartbreak of being told to eat alone, the courage it took to open my door, and the joy that had come from saying yes to new beginnings. I realized that the story wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt left out, everyone who had ever wondered if they mattered, everyone who had ever longed for a place to belong. It belonged to the neighbors who became friends, the family who found their way back, and the strangers who became part of our circle. I picked up my phone and wrote a message to the community, sharing what was in my heart. Thank you for showing me that one act of kindness can change everything. Thank you for reminding me that family is more than blood. It's the people who show up, who listen, who forgive, and who make room at their table. If you're ever feeling alone, remember, you have the power to open your own door. You have the power to create family, to build community, to turn loneliness into hope. All it takes is one invitation, one open heart. As I pressed send, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and fear. But I also knew that I was never truly alone. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke to messages from people all over the state. Some who had seen the news story, others who had heard about our suppers from friends. They wanted to know how to start their own, how to bring their communities together, how to find hope in the midst of loneliness. I spent the day answering emails, sharing recipes, and offering encouragement. It felt good to know that our little story might help others find their own sense of belonging. That evening, as the sun set and my family gathered in the living room, I looked around at the faces I loved, at the family I'd fought for, the friends I'd found, and the community we'd built together. I stood up, feeling a surge of gratitude. I just want to say thank you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. Thank you for believing in me, for forgiving me, for letting me be part of your lives. I don't know what the future holds, but I know we'll face it together. And I know that, no matter what, there will always be a place for you at my table. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Jasmine smiled and said, to new traditions, Aunt Helen. And to never letting anyone feel alone again. We raised our cups in a toast, laughter and love filling the room. If you're listening to my story tonight, I want you to remember this. No matter how alone you feel, no matter how many times you've been left out or let down, you have the power to open your own door. You have the power to create family, to build community, to turn heartbreak into hope. All it takes is one act of courage, one invitation, one open heart. So if you're ever told to eat alone, or if you find yourself on the outside looking in, don't let it break you. Let it be the start of something new. You never know whose life you might change, including your own. Have you ever felt left out or alone during the holidays? What did you do to find your way back to joy? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Thank you for being part of my family right here, right now. Until next time, remember, there's always a place for you at my table.